Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on this beautiful Friday. Sun is shining where I'm at right now. I hope sun is shining on you as well. I know it's very, very cold. Today, we are going to hear from three different faculty members with three different poster sessions. We're really excited to welcome them here today. I just want to go over some housekeeping really quickly. We are recording this session so that it can be seen by the faculty learning community members at a later time, and we will make sure that that is put up on the faculty learning community website. So this is being hosted by the University of North Carolina System Faculty Learning Community on Teaching and Learning with Generative AI, and I am Dr. Jules Keith Lay. I am one of the faculty facilitators of this group, and I'm from the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. Um, as we go through the three different presenters today, they will have 5 minutes to present their posters, and then we will have 10 minutes afterwards for you to ask questions. If questions come to you during the presentation while they're presenting, I'm going to ask you to put those in the chat, please. That way, there's a way for them to go back and look and answer questions systematically. We have a large group here today, which is wonderful, but we're going to have lots and lots of questions. So I'm going to be keeping time as well. So I might jump in and say, hey, 5 minutes is up and, wrap up and let's go to questions. So I'll keep time for our presenters. Our three presenters today are John Classen. He's professor of biological and agricultural engineering from North Carolina State University. And he's going to be presenting on student evaluation of AI literature summary. Our second presenter is Heather Griffiths, Associate Professor from the Department of Sociology and Interdisciplinary Studies from Fayetteville State University. And our third presenter is Soni Martin, Professor of Art at Fayetteville State University. Soni is going to be presenting on cultural awareness, unmasking bias, and emotional stimulation. And I did not say this, but Heather is going to be presenting on AI scaffolded assignments. So our first presenter is John. And so I'm going to hand the floor over to you, John. You can share your screen. I will start a timer for you, and we will have our first poster session.
Hi, thank you, Jules, and thank you for all of you for joining us. I'm happy to share this today. Uh, I teach a graduate course, two courses actually, sequence to first year MS and PhD students in our department. The goal of the first course that I'm talking about here is a literature review, and the second semester produces a proposal for their research. The idea is to get them started early. Um, in spite of the broad use of AI and large language models, I found that students' use is inconsistent, and some are reluctant to use it at all, and some use it for everything. And I think neither of those is good for students. They need to be able to engage with large language models and AI. And so I wanted them to do that and to reflect on their experience. Um, I have the specific learning objectives that I shared with the students there. An earlier assignment to get them started on literature review was to review just one paper, write a one-page summary of one paper that's related to your research. I then asked them in three parts in this assignment to ask the large language model of their choice to summarize that same article, um, give its own version, upload the article and summarize it. I then asked them to put their summary into the large language model and ask the large language model to revise that. And that took some iteration, and I prompted them, warned them that they would need to adjust those prompts and reprompt as needed. And then part three was the reflection, and this is the interesting part. How did you react to the use of this? What were the differences? What were good? What was bad? And I have some common themes from these reflections. There were 18 students in this class. And I read through all of these, but in full disclosure, I used Gemini to actually help me organize the themes. So they identified that the best use of this, they agreed that this was best for revisions, not authorships. The large language model by itself missed some nuances and produced what we now call AI slop, some generic words that make sense but actually don't really say anything. There were some technical errors that that the LLM did not pick up in their version, or that the LLM generated in their version, even though there was only the one paper that they used. They did not get some things right. Part of the assignment was a criticism of the paper, and some of those criticisms were pretty general and demonstrated a misunderstanding of the field, and therefore a need for the human involved to pick up on that. They were frustrated with the iterative prompting. I warned them about that, but they were frustrated, especially the one that said that the subsequent revision would sometimes leave out important information that was previously included. The best use, I think, or a very common benefit was that the LLMs did excel at word choice and at grammar and tone. It was able to adjust the tone. About half the class was international students, and they commented that it was very helpful to them to have this tool to help them pass some of the vocabulary. It saved them a lot of time, not for the thought process, just for the struggling with words. They were able to focus on the technical aspects of the paper. So I did not hear any warning bells, but from Jules, but I'll be happy to take any questions if you have time.
You're right on time, John. Perfect. I'll start the 10 minutes for questions. What questions do we have for John? I have questions. I can get it started.
Okay.
Maybe this will warm everybody up here. So what LLMs were your okay, good. We have other questions too. What LLMs were your students using?
I gave them their choice. Most of them were using ChatGPT. Some were using Gemini, which is my preferred system on our campus because it's closed. If you log in with your NC State credentials,
Hmm.
there is one in particular, one student that used a different one that I can't remember, but it was her use was primarily for translation. She did the thinking and the writing in Spanish, her native language, and then used the large language model to do the translation.
Okay. Thank you. I was thinking about that because I was thinking about the difference between like as you said, the data protected closed system versus the open system, and if students noted anything about that, any differences, if they expressed any opinions about the differences between the two.
They didn't hear, but they didn't really have the chance. This was not their research. This was a publicly available journal article that they were using. Perplexity, at least one student did use Perplexity, I recall now.
Okay. We've also got two more people with questions. I'm going to go in order that I saw hands. Dr. Heather McCullough has a question, and then Christy, you're next. So Heather.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this. I think it seems like a wonderful exercise and easy to replicate. I have two questions. My first question is, was there anything that surprised you or your students, maybe about what was learned in the exercise? And the second question is, how might you adapt this or use this with undergraduates?
So what was learned or surprised, I wasn't really surprised, but I was pleased at how many students caught realized that the large language model wasn't a replacement for their thinking. That was an important lesson, I think. I wasn't surprised. I've seen that in my own work, but I was pleased that they picked up on that. For an undergraduate, I think it could be used with any, even a short write-in assignment, if you can convince them to not use large language model in the first place. And I didn't mention that, but I told them that the first time for that first review, for their review, I told them they would use a large language model later. So do not use it here. Now, did I check that? There's no way for me to check that. But I take it from me working with grad students, I think they're more likely to understand the value of the work and go with me on that one.
Thank you.
Okay, Christy and then Jeffrey.
Hi, nice to see you,
Hi,
John.
hi,
Um,
Christy.
so I have also two questions. One, do you think having gone through this assignment, you want to repeat it in future semesters? And my other question was if there were any interesting comments from the students about maybe like how this changed their opinion of using LLMs going forward, or if how it informed their future use of generative AI.
Good questions. I would use it again. I didn't use it this semester. This is from 2024, the fall of 2024. I did not use it last semester because I didn't have the same assignment. I changed from instead of them starting with reviewing a specific article, I took a different structure to the course. So that's the reason I didn't use it. I think it's still a valuable tool, but it must be recognized that as large language models change and how their output changes, the prompts may have to change, the assignment may have to change, the rubric may have to change to get them to get the same value, which is get them to see the differences and reflect on the different experiences. You had a second question, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to repeat it.
Just if the students made any comments about how this changed their opinion of like using large language models or generative AI going forward.
Well, some of their comments reflected that they did see a good use as a reviewer or for revisions. I think it convinced many not to use it for primary thinking. Um, I have a separate assignment this past semester where I asked the students to spend up to 90 seconds explaining their philosophy and use of AI to the whole class. That's a separate assignment that I can talk about another time, but I'm going to keep AI in front of students in a number of different ways.
Thank you. Okay, Jeffrey and then GA.
Yeah, my question was about you mentioned that in some cases that they were the data that the model produced sometimes left out previous information. Was that just because of a command issue, like not repeating that you want this in and just to rephrase it or something, or was it just leaving out the information on because it didn't know it was
I,
supposed to add it?
yeah, that's a good question, Jeffrey. I did not follow up with the students on this, but my impression is that, and really from my own experience, once you get past three, four, or five iterations of prompting to revise an output, at least last year, um, the models, at least Gemini that I used, would do this, that would some things would change. And so I think it was the model itself changing, not the fact that the student left didn't include the same thing. And I've heard it before, like you're talking to working with a large language model is working with a very smart kindergartner. I think that was Christie's comment. And yeah, so they forget things you told them 5 minutes ago.
Okay, thank
Gia.
you. Gia?
Yeah. Hi. Thank you for the poster. Actually, I assigning to my student about practicing prompt engineering. So I have two questions, but one is answered because I ask my student how many times do you have to change your prompt, and they usually say 4 to 5 times. It's very similar with that. And then the other question is. Prompt types are vary, like a zero shot, few shot, chain of thought, or those kind of things you like show them and looking at them at the first time before you they try to like summarize those things, but just let them do it without showing types.
That's a very good point. At this point in 2024, I did not give them any guidance on prompt engineering. Um, Christy, I think this was Christy Borda visited our class and talked somewhat about large language models. And I think you visited before we did this assignment, and I think you talked a little bit about prompt and how to write a good prompt. But that has changed a lot in the last 12 or 15 months. So that's a good point. We do have to talk more about that, and I've learned a lot about that in the last 6 months. Um, and some of the prompts that I've written recently have been a page long, and in fact, and I'm trying to get specific output. So
Yeah.
I mean, like these days, like, I'm really interested in a prompt. So I looking at that, and now they say content engineering, something like that. They just not try to fix some of the prompt types and things like that. So I really wanna need to like update myself too. Thank you.
yeah, I think the writing a very detailed prompt up front, even if it's a page long, is much better than writing a simple question and then trying to fix it.
Absolutely, absolutely. John, you are 10 seconds left. I'm going to go ahead. I want to get this last question in and give you 1 minute to
Oh,
answer it if
okay,
we can do that, okay? It's a
sure.
question that was in the chat. So, in 1 minute, could you tell us more about the assignment scaffolding and, oh, my timer, there we go. Um, and were there multiple due dates for the summaries and the reflection specifically?
Um, the only scaffolding was that they gave the did the first paper, the first their I'm sorry, their first review of the paper. They submitted that first. And on the day that was due, then the other assignment was given, that was released, and that had all three parts.
Okay.
So their first review was done. They knew use of a large language model was coming. They didn't know the details about it, um, but they did that first, and then all of the other three were three parts of one assignment.
Okay, thank you, John. That question came from Alok Amata. And that is time for John. Thank you so much. Let's give John a round of applause.
Thank you.
Round of applause. There we go. Okay, our next presenter is Heather Griffiths from Fayetteville State University. Heather, you can share your screen. And once you've got everything up, I will hit the timer for you.
Okay. Can everyone see that okay?
Yes, we can. There we go. Perfect.
Very good. So this is designed to be a very low stakes assignment. I teach in an online environment the majority of the time. I have systems in place to kind of spot check AI use and control it. The use is increasing. And I know it's increasing because I require students to do their work in a Google Doc. And if I have a concern that AI has been used but not been acknowledged, then I run it through a detector. And if the detector flags it as positive, I tell the student, send me your Google Doc and let me see your revision history. And most of the time, it turns out that they were using AI where they should not have been because they don't have the Google Doc link to send me, or they send it to me and it's showing 500 words typed in 10 minutes. It's physically impossible. So this semester, I adjusted 5 total assignments across 2 classes. And this is just one example. The assignments are designed to focus on prompt refinement, verified sourcing, and sociological analysis tied to the course. So there's an emphasis on what humans add to the process. There's an attempt to create a sense of discernment for the students so that they can tell quality from not quality, human from not human. And I start by giving them a very, very basic prompt. In the Sociology of Gender class, we cover a chapter on biology and biological differences. So step 1, the original prompt is, in 300 to 500 words, how are female brains different from male brains? And that's where they start. If they've done what they need to do during the process, they end with a humanized sociological analysis that they can remember and test on. So they're graded on how well they're using it and how well they're humanizing it. Each step in this process builds on the last, and this is kind of mirrors exactly how professionals work with AI in the real world. So from that prompt, I tell the student, figure out how to change this prompt to make it more specific and more sociological. That might mean use the sociological imagination. In 300 and 500 words, describe how female brains are different from male brains. Or the student might tie it to a theoretical perspective, postmodernism, feminism, functional symbolic interaction, and conflict. Those are ones I expect to see frequently. For that first prompt, how well they do, they get a point. They have to change the prompt again. They have to make it more interesting in some way, more personal. And they have wide latitude to do this because I'm piloting the template this semester, and I expect to really be able to refine it and come back with a much stronger assignment for my fall class in 2026. And so in step 3, after they've made it more interesting and personal, they have step 4, they have to add sourcing. Generative AI, whether or not the student tells it to produce sources, it's going to come back with claims that can be sourced. So for their essay, anytime a claim appears, some statement, some statistic, somebody says something, they have to validate that with their sourcing. And that's in step 4. I give them 2 points for that. Remember, this is designed to be low stakes. In step 5, they're required to go back to the specific chapter they're using, and they have to identify concepts from the chapter, define, cite, and apply those concepts. So if they've done the prompt engineering correctly and they've made it more sociological, the concepts are already bolded in the text, they can go straight through the glossary. I keep trying to slide it like I'm giving a presentation. That's why it keeps blinking. So in the final step, they have to add personalization and creativity. So when I read that final output, I shouldn't get any obvious signs that it's AI. There should be sourcing. There should be content tied to the chapter they've just read. There should be some kind of personal example there. With the rubric I'm using, the lower points will enable me to quickly scan through the essay and say, okay, I see these templates. I see how they changed it. Here's the output. Here's the sourcing. I'll spot check one source per essay. I know the concept already, so I'll be able to just read the essay and tell if the concept is what it should be or not. And then at the end of the day, the student is going to get 10 points. Now, I can share my screen again to show you the assignment template.
Let's
This is
where we're at time, Heather,
Oh,
on
dang
the
it.
5 minutes from the presentation. No, go ahead. I want you to share your screen or your template. I do want you to share it. I'm not going to cut you off from
Okay.
that, but I want us to also, people who have questions for Heather, let's go ahead and let's put those in the chat or let's raise our hands and we'll take those in that order while she's sharing this as well. So Heather, go ahead and explain this while people are gathering their questions for you.
Okay.
I've got
So
your question timer going.
I tell them you have to copy this entire template, put it into the Google Docs. At that point, I'll be able to see by looking at the revision history what they changed, how long it took them to change it. And they're just pasting their content here. They're allowed to use any form of generative AI they want. If they want to try to refine and humanize using an AI, sure, they're welcome to try. At the bottom, recommend that they use a free AI detector, see if it's getting flagged. And I think that will also help them understand that what they think is a really polished and professional sounding essay is reading as 100% AI to anybody who's looking at it. And that's going to trip them up later in life. So it's a pretty short template. It's organized to tell the students exactly what to do. And I'm happy to take any questions about it.
Okay, so you've got one in the chat, and then Jeffrey has his hand raised. So we'll start with the chat. Christy Borda says, how often do you see a false positive from the AI checker tool?
I use Pangram and Quillbot. The Google Doc is the record that I really do rely on. Students who are cheating with AI because the last minute they had pressure or they didn't think I was checking, it's really obvious. Most of the time, I don't even need to use the checker. I do because I want the percentage, I want the number. I don't ever tell the student, you used AI. I tell the student, your work has received an AI flag on the detector I use. Send me your Google Doc link. I did research on 600 some student submitted essays using the first iteration of my generative AI class policy. I found of about 80 or 90 positives, only 5 students even bothered to submit the Google Doc. In 3 of those cases, the work had been flagged for AI because it was AI. The student, I guess, didn't think I was checking. They thought they were going to send me the Google Doc, and I'd say, oh, okay, great. You're an honest person. You sent me what I asked for. The other 2 cases, I think one was an ESL case. Only one, to me, did not meet the standard for, okay, this is AI, your revision history didn't clear you. In that case, the revision history was ambiguous. I always err on the side of, okay, look, we have a professor-student relationship. I'm not trying to start a fight. I'm not trying to be combative. You sent me what I asked for. I still can't tell, so cool. And that only happened once, and it hardly ever happens anymore because the generative AIs are becoming more sophisticated. The student ability to humanize content is becoming more sophisticated, but the checkers are more sophisticated as well. And if you're at all familiar with where the content comes from, that the checkers use to determine whether or not something is AI, there's a lot of words that pop up in Nigerian English that does not come to American English, like the word keen. I was reading something the other day and someone said, oh, I was just so keen to try this out. I thought, who says that? You're not from England. Why are you using this word that we never hear? Maybe you're a Harry Potter fan. But I checked it. It was 100% AI. And they couldn't demonstrate otherwise. They didn't have the Google Doc link at all.
Thank you for that data. That is very robust. 600 students. Awesome. Okay,
600
Jeffrey.
essays.
600 essays. Excellent. Okay. Jeffrey has his hand up, and then Soni has a question in the chat. So we'll go Jeffrey and Soni.
Yeah, I am fortunate enough to have a college student. My son is a senior this year, but I think this was last year, a year and a half ago, where he was asked to do an assignment, and he was flagged for using AI, which he said he didn't even use at all. And I think it came back and said, kind of like you were talking about, that it will say that some AI was used. And the professor checked it again and came back and was like, okay, you didn't use it. My question to you would be, say for instance, I'm building an aircraft and I come up with this whole concept and all of this, and still my concept is not AI's, but I ask AI to revise what I've come up with to make it sound like I'm not just rambling on and thoughts coming out of my head. If it flags that, is that still a red herring for you? That too much AI was used? How does that work?
One of my class parameters for AI use says that students are allowed to use AI. They just have to acknowledge it. Early in the process, I was getting students who would say, oh, but I used AI, but just a teensy little bit. And I'd say, okay, that's awesome. Where's the reference that says you used Grammarly or Microsoft Word Editor, or you fed your original version into an AI and it spit back an improved version? Because if the student can show me the one paragraph thing they fed into the AI and say, yeah, I used it, then they're not getting penalized for it. And that's one of the reasons that I do have such a strict method for checking. Tell me you use it and reference it, and we're all good, man. I mean, it's the ones who keep insisting they're not using it. They've never used it. And some of them get very combative. They really do. But at the end of the day, show me the Google Doc.
Okay, thank you. That was a great question, Jeffrey. Soni wanted to know more about, what do you mean humanized?
So I spend a lot of time playing with generative AI. I've done some research conferences with it. I've done some research on it. Basic prompts do not yield human responses. They yield a very standardized 5-paragraph essay, each sentence of uniform length, each thought expressed clearly enough at a first glance, but not really saying anything. If you've ever looked at discussion board comments where you get a student who writes 7 or 8 lines of response, but they haven't said a single thing, it'll read like, I really like how you thought about this problem. I agree with you. We should do X, Y, and Z. You're really great. Thanks for being part of the class. And somebody can go on like that for 8 lines without saying a single thing. Generative AI can do the same thing, unless you tell it to do the following. Vary sentence length. Use a mixture of formal and informal language. Use a mixture of contractions and sentences without contractions. Make mistakes on purpose. Your students, at least one of them and probably more, have already gotten to a stage where they can humanize content pretty effectively. I don't love that part. I don't. I want to see the human value added. I want to see the personality, and I tell students that. But you know what? They do need to be able to humanize it if they're going to be competitive on the workforce, because these are the tools they're going to be required to use.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So we have got approximately 1 minute and 20 seconds left. Do we have any additional questions for Heather? Or Heather, do you have any closing comments that you'd like to share with us?
When I first did the research, checking how many students were using AI in a way that I could really understand and map, relatively few students used AI. I was so confident. I felt great. I said, okay, the ones who are using it, I'm catching. Most of them aren't, or most of them, they use it once. I check, they get caught, and don't use it anymore with me. But I know my colleagues don't always have the same focus on generative AI use. And where no one is checking or where no one is catching, the students are using it because they're worried about their grades. Students who are using generative AI without getting caught are getting excellent grades. They're screwing up the curve and making the students who are hardworking, who really want to understand, feel stupid because they're spending 3 hours to accomplish something and getting a B, honestly, whereas the other students are spending 10 minutes throwing something together. It's very sloppy, walking away without really retaining the knowledge and getting an A for it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Heather. That was fantastic. John and Heather, y'all both have been great. We're going to go on to our last and final presentation now, and we can keep those questions coming in the chat. Our final presenter is Soni Martin from Fayetteville State University. We are going to get Soni's presentation pulled up, and I'll get the timer ready. We won't start until everything looks good. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Soni, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you, Heather. And thank everyone for being here. This is a senior undergraduate course. It's a face-to-face course, and it's art criticism. All the students are in the class are visual artists, and they do not want to take art criticism, because they're artists. The purpose of using AI is that, first of all, the same information that I have taught in past semesters is conveyed, but using AI, I'm actually able to get the students to do more work outside of class, things that are important to me. Is how I use AI, which is focusing on the student themselves. I'm focusing on, with these assignments, teaching them metacognition, how this works, reflect first. They're addressing personal bias. We're talking about empathy. We're talking about human versus machine. And what's also important is, for me, is that I'm rethinking how I assess students. And so now I think engagement is just as important as that exam. So these assignments are points on their exam, and that sort of encourages them to be, very engaged with the assignment. So this is one that pretty direct, where they're given 2 questions. I have a work of art up there that is pretty challenging when you tape a banana to the wall. The title is Comedian. And they're just asked 2 questions and to write it down, which is, in your opinion, what is the value of this work of art? And then the second question is, and I say, imagine you're there. You've got to imagine you're at the gallery, or you're not going to have an aesthetic experience. So let's just imagine you're there. And what is your emotional response to Comedian? So they write down, their answers. And then I have them put the same 2 prompts. I have those 2 questions as prompts. And so when AI, we use Copilot here at Fayetteville State. Of course, Copilot is going to answer the value of this work with a lot of some, I would say, sort of scholarly reasons that they haven't thought about. So there's more knowledge for them, or to think about that in a different way. But in this assignment, they put into Copilot, what is your emotional response to Comedian? Well, this is important because this opens up this dialogue with them about the machine has no feelings, And so we have discussion about human emotion and simulation, or authentic versus mimicry, which is machine, real emotion versus illusion. And so that's what I have as part of the brief class discussions on that bottom right box. And then this also dovetailed, this assignment dovetailed into a theorist, Pierre Bourdieu, who was a sociologist, that we were getting ready to talk about. And he talks about how culture really defines how we view works of art. And so we call that human habitus. And now we have machine habitus. So they're able to compare those two things. And so it just raises by using AI in these assignments, outside of knowledge, I'm really focusing on how to sort of raise their consciousness about their own bias, their own prejudices, for them to be more open-minded. And so that's what this particular assignment was for, them to look at really their own bias and to start thinking about the limitations of AI and be very clear on that. So these are some of this is one assignment that I did recently.
Okay, thank you, Soni. You are right on time with 10 seconds left. So I'll open the floor for questions. You can raise your hand or in the chat. This is incredibly interesting to me because I was actually thinking about this yesterday while I was driving. I was thinking about where we're going towards agentic AI, and I think I'd watched a movie with my husband where there's a robot that it looks just like a human and it takes on human feelings and human emotions and begins to act in an erratic way. But I started to really kind of have this conversation then with my daughter later about, you know, are your grandkids going to be interacting with AI robots that look just like humans and you can't tell? We were having a very interesting conversation about that I could go on for a while, but I won't. We have a hand up. We've got Heather and John, so we'll go with Heather first and then John.
So, Soni, have you yourself tried this across a few different AI and tried to see if you could provoke the AI into coming back with a facsimile of emotion?
No, I didn't do that. It just says, it says very directly, I don't have emotion. It just says it. It's very direct. And so I just stopped there. We don't encourage students to create works of art using AI because of how they look, how silly they look. So this is just to show them or get them it's very important they experience. We can tell them, look, machines are emotional, but I know it's important for students to experience things, to experience that machine saying, I don't have emotion. All I can do is report patterns. And I just feel like then when they're engaged this way, that they understand it in a different way. So, yeah.
Soni, and this is just a thought for fun, and you and me can get together over lunch and play with this. Write as part of the prompt, act as a second year art student, really invested in this piece of art. Use words that show emotion, just to see what you can come back with, because that act as modifier is huge. Once students get their hands on that, they get a lot better at prompt engineering.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Heather, and thank you, Soni. John, you're up next for question, and then Heather after John.
Thank you, Soni. My question is, I'm interested in the class discussions, especially the individual bias and AI bias. We all have our bias, and some of us are more aware of our own biases than others, and we're aware of AI biases. And I just wondered how those conversations, that class discussion went.
Well, it's important for the students in this class in particular, to address their own bias, because we all have bias. And that's why I picked something that's sort of challenging so they can, something that would challenge what they think is art. But so the whole class really is about their own bias and changing the bias. I don't think that on this particular assignment, we didn't find bias because it, Copilot just said, look, I don't feel emotion. But in other assignments, we can find bias. But I didn't see bias in this one, but we talked about bias in other assignments.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd also like to say that everything everyone is talking about is really important. Like the students knowing prompts, transparency is important. Heather, the way she holds students accountable in a really nice way is really important. But on my end, we teach all these things and we certainly teach tools, but from my perspective, I think it's really important. Another mindset is to really work with the students on some of these issues, like their own bias, how they see things. Getting them to be reflective is very important to me. Yeah. And that dovetails into then them being more critical thinkers, more creative, as well. If I just teach them tools, the tools are going to be obsolete. But those characteristics that drive creativity will drive in any discipline still exist. Open-mindedness.
That's right. Those you're describing essential human skills, and
Yes.
even in our the STEM fields that I work in, those are important, and the reflection
Yes.
is one of the most important, which is why I focused on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Reflection is important. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, John. Heather?
Thank you so much for the presentation, Soni. I think my comment is tangential at best, but I was just going to say that I enjoyed hearing about engaging students and like art students and thinking about AI, and it made me remember from way back readings that I had done in graduate school. So this was a while back. With like our postmodern theorist like Baudrillard and Roland Barthes and just what is art and what is what is not and what is human and what is not. So anyway, I just wanted to say I enjoyed the presentation and the angle on that and working with students and helping them develop that critical perspective.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather, definitely. And Heather Griffiths has added something to the chat. I'm still in the process of reading it. I'd like to actually encourage everyone to read it really quickly. Heather, do you want to comment on that?
I wanted to see what would happen. So I asked the AI about Soni's prompt on the comedian. It was in the space between the end of one question and someone else beginning to ask theirs. That's what it produced. I copied and pasted it.
Say that again.
I wanted to see what would happen if I plugged your question. What is your emotional response to the work titled comedian?
Yes.
Did you ask it to, like you were talking about earlier, did you ask it to take on a persona or?
I only had a moment. So I said, act as an art critic nearing the end of their career. What emotional value does the artwork titled comedian have? When you answer, use words that convey strong emotion.
Oh, wow.
It's a terrible essay. I haven't read it for detail, but
yeah, it's the end of your career part is coming through. I think a little bit in from my reading of it. Jeffrey, you have your hand up. The floor is yours.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'm enjoying watching people utilize this technology and moving it forward because have no idea where it's going next.
Right.
But I did take I was lucky enough to go to a conference in Boston some years back before COVID, and it talked about, will you have a job in 10 years? And this was before, yeah, I mean, we've been dealing with artificial intelligence for a long time, but it wasn't the AI it is today. And so many professions, it said, would not have a job because it we weren't really talking about AI, but they were saying computers would take it over, you know. And at that point, you know, I came to realize, and I was telling my son, who was still in high school then, no matter what career you get into, if you are the person in charge of the computer, giving it information and reaping the rewards for it, you will always have a job. It's going to put a lot of people out of business that just, you know, but if you are that person that can communicate with the computer, understands what's going on, you will always have a job because you always need somebody to put the data in the computer. And I'm glad to see that professors are using it on a regular basis because this world that these students are graduating into is going to be a world full of this, and they're going to need to know how to use it if they want
Mhm.
to be the best in whatever field they're going to be in.
Yeah. And, you know, art reflects the culture, great art that's in museums, reflects the culture that it was created in. And AI is going to influence our culture in ways from an artistic perspective it's going to influence that. So it's going to influence our culture, and that will be demonstrated in works that are created. Um, yeah.
Okay, we still have about 45 seconds left. I just
Let
wanted to
me
mention,
go
Soni,
ahead.
Soni, I just want to say I have an MFA. I studied art as well. And so that's why when I was reading what Heather's prompt gave back, it in the just the iron there it uses the word irony, but the irony of the tone that it took on based on the prompt that she gave it was very apparent to me as being somebody. Yeah, here Jason Whitley is on here too. He has a BFA. So
Yeah.
all of us artists who are working in technology now, looking at what Heather got back from generative AI, which when she prompted it the way she did, I think that yeah, there is irony there and humor at what the computer thinks that we think right now.
And
Okay,
my,
that
my,
keep
my
going. Yeah,
only 2 points with this. Look, we know when it's AI generated, these
yeah.
works of art. I mean, they're so predictable, they all look alike, whatever. My thing is, if a work is generated, that, you know, just say it's generated. Just be transparent
Hmm.
and not fool the public. Like we can see it, or maybe if something I can't identify. They're pretty illustrative, though. They don't really reveal the humanity. They're very illustrative. But addressing what the participants said about the design, you know, you just always give credit. That transparency is really important. And there's nothing wrong with saying created by Copilot or whatever, because you put the prompts in, you kept changing it. But, you know, don't say that, you know, you drew it up or whatever, or you painted it. Just, you know, give credit.
Yeah, and I think that the future of art with generative AI, and I'm seeing this with artists that I know and who are friends who are they're working with generative AI.
Yeah.
It's meant to be commentary on this is a piece I created using AI, and you know that AI was used, and that's part of the
Right.
the concept and what I'm trying to convey to you through this piece. There are several artists I know here at UNC Charlotte who are doing that. Heather
Mhm.
Heather Freeman, Jeff Murphy, my former professor from UF, Barbara Jo Ravel, is doing some really wild stuff with video and generative AI. We've got another comment here that says, today we can detect AI, Greg Bottomley is saying, but it will become more difficult as the technology improves. And Heather's mentioning that the video technology is getting so sophisticated. Yeah. I've caught myself too, like thinking that's real. Like the cat playing in the heavy metal band, I thought it was real I did. It fooled me. And then my daughter's like, she catches it immediately. She's like, that's generative AI. And I was like, no, I wanted there to be heavy metal cat. Too bad. Um, and then here we've got someone who's sharing, Jeff Robinson sharing an example of an aircraft he designed with AI. So this has been a wonderful presentation from everybody. Soni, thank you so much to you. Heather, so much to you, and John, so much to you as well. I want us to give all three of our presenters today for their poster presentations a huge, massive round of applause. We can do digital applause, and we can also unmute and if we want to, definitely. Yes. Okay, I am going to make sure that this video is available to everyone who is here today, and we'll also be sharing it with everyone who is not able to be here today. So for other people who are in the FLC, we will be getting this out to you shortly. I hope everyone has a beautiful weekend, and thank you to everyone who is part of making today happen and everyone who attended and engaged with this presentation. This was great. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, this was wonderful.
I really enjoyed it. Thanks.